Meeting for this Tuesday, December the 13th. We have a pretty extensive day today and tomorrow. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Our first item this morning is a county administration item. It's a public hearing and order and resolution 16-12-13-01. It's in the matter of adopting the fiscal year 16-17 supplemental budget number 2, making, reducing, and transferring appropriations. We have with us this morning Christine Moody, our Budget and Finance Planning Manager. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Stewart, Commissioners. So this is your second supplemental budget, as you mentioned, of the fiscal year. This is the one after the external financial audit where we adjust our fund balances in every fund. So the budget is increasing in size because of bringing forward that additional fund balance that wasn't known back during budget prep. I don't know if you want me to go into more comments or wait, do the public hearing first. Would you like me to finish first?
Why don't you go ahead and finish first?
Okay.
We'll do public.
So we do have a few things I'd like to highlight for you, especially in the general fund. We are adding 2 FTE. Those exist in the district attorney's office and involve an administrative support specialist and a medical examiner. We are also transferring about $68,000 out of the general fund over into the animal services fund, which you may remember moved into its own fund on the last supplemental. That's so that they can establish a reserve within that fund because they were part of the general fund. They didn't need that at the time they were in there. We do have about 4 funds that are changing in size by more than 10%. That's why we need the public hearing. That's the Title III fund carrying forward a fund balance, Trillium Behavior Health and Health and Human Services, and then some technology and equipment funds that are changing. Other than that, this supplemental also includes the appropriation of some labor contract changes that the board has previously approved, as well as some other board orders, FTE changes, final grant adjustments. That would be the sum of the changes. So I'm open for any questions.
Okay. Questions from Ms. Moody? All right, seeing none. At this time, I'll open the public hearing for the supplemental budget. Is there anyone that is here to give public comment? No?
No.
All right. So with that, I'll close the public hearing. Up to the board for discussion, potential motion. Commissioner Lycan.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move approval of order in Resolution 16-12-13-01 in the matter of adopting FY 16-17 supplemental budget number 2, making, reducing, and transferring appropriations.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Moody.
Mr. Chair, I know we need to you have a long day today, but I wanted to not miss an opportunity. We brought down the public safety graph here to just highlight the fact that, again, we're trying to make investments here, and our departments and elected offices are doing a fantastic job of finding ways to use existing resources to meet the needs in the community. So, of course, in the budget, we added 2 FTE in the district attorney's office to prosecute an additional 400 lower level felonies per year, and District Attorney Perlow has done a fantastic job of reorganizing to allow for the creation with existing resources to allow for the creation of these 2 new FTE in the medical examiner's function. And so you see that investment, you see the transfer of general fund resources to establish a reserve in animal services and the creation of the position in the road fund on vegetation, on vegetation management as well, which was a priority of the board with the adoption of the new vegetation management policy. So again, I just wanted to call that out, and oftentimes the supplementals kind of run through as a routine process, but I think it's important to reflect on the fact that we are using our existing resources to meet the needs in the community and make our community healthier, safer, and more vibrant.
Thank you for that. Other comments on the okay. Any more comments? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimous. Thank you. Next is our public comment period. At this time, I'll call up the folks that have signed up. Please restate your name and area of residence, and then I'll start a 3-minute timer to allow you to speak. Okay, the first person is Betty Grant. morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Betty Grant. I am a property owner in North Eugene and a member of the newly formed North Eugene Homeless Advocacy Coalition. I'm here to speak on two short items. One is to appreciate the work that the Commission has done allocating funds for long-term housing solutions to our housing crisis, and also, though, to ask for equal attention to providing emergency housing for our unhoused citizens in all future budget decisions. Also, I'm asking for the serious consideration of the Commission to loosen up ordinances for use of land that might be appropriate for car camping and rest stops in Lane County, throughout Lane County. Specifically, the North Eugene Advocacy Group is starting to outreach to churches, and our focus is Santa Clara and River Road. We're looking at unused parkland and also tax defaulted land held by Lane County, which we understand often is in the hands of Lane County for a year or two before it is sold and could be a perfect place to cite a rest stop. So I'd like you to look at loosening those ordinances. I come about this work from a humanitarian concern and also social justice concern, but equally from a concern for public safety for all of Lane County residents. People are sleeping in our parks and along our waterways as well as on our streets. They are defecating on the land next to waterways. This is creating a serious public health concern, I think, for our citizens, and it doesn't seem to get much light and attention. And the trash is the same situation that's polluting our parks and our waterways. It's also making, North Eugene has this incredible resource of all this land along the river, but it's not as well used by citizens as it could be because there's a fear of people taking, particularly their families, into the park areas. So I think, are increasing rest stops and car camping going to totally do away with those issues? No, honestly, they're not. But they do provide an option for people to go to who are ready and willing to take that step, and and then it leaves the rest of the people. There's a lot less law enforcement to address issues of illegal camping when there's much less illegal camping. So I hope that you will take this situation seriously for the health and public safety of all citizens in Lane County. There are places, I'm speaking in North Eugene, but there are many other parks and waterways around the county, and the same holds true. So thank you.
Thank you. Great. Next is it Phil Carrasco?
Good morning, all. How's it going? So I've come to speak today in proposal of a sanctuary county.
Phil, can you just restate your name and area?
Sorry, Phil Carrasco, and I live in South Eugene District, Commissioner Sorensen's district.
Thank you.
So we've been hearing a lot of real threats coming from current, future administration, federal administration. There's been talk of mass deportation, registry of Muslims, and so on, to start, right? With no promise of due process. A lot of this rhetoric has shooken up a lot of our communities, the most vulnerable segments of our community. So what I'm asking for today, in short, is along with hundreds of local folks that have been providing public comment to city government, and now are hoping to establish this as a county ordinance, is to protect the most vulnerable folks here in our county. So is that we continue the promises made by another elected official, such as Sheriff Byron Trapp, for example, to uphold state ordinance 181.A250. And as we recall, some of these ordinances state that no use of agency monies, equipment, or personnel for the purpose of detecting or apprehending persons whose only violation of law is that they are persons of foreign citizenship present in the U.S. in violation of federal immigration laws, and that it also 181A250, sorry, the previous was 181 820. But 250 also provides that no law enforcement agency may collect or maintain information about political, religious, or social views, associations, or activities of any individual, group, association, organization, corporation, business, or partnership unless such information directly relates to an investigation of criminal activities and there are reasonable grounds to suspect the subject of the information is or may be involved in criminal conduct. So basically what we're asking is upholding these type of laws at the county level. So I want to thank Commissioners Farr, Sorensen as well for considering beginning this process as we spoke before. A resolution was adopted about a week ago by this body, and now it's high time, I think, that we codify said commitment. We can't have segments of our population living in fear, and it's important to continue building the community's trust in law enforcement, county government, and elected officials. So while we consider an ordinance, which I know is a process in and of itself, I would ask this body to consider potentially issuing an administrative order to county employees to uphold the laws Sheriff, the other elected official, Sheriff Byron Trapp, has chosen to uphold. So I would ask you to consider these things. I want you to know there are a lot of people in support of this, and I promise to make sure they connect with you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the board this morning that's here? Okay. So that will conclude our public comment for today, and I'll move to item 3, which is Commissioner's response to the public comment and or other issues and remonstrance. Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you so much to our public commenters today, and in particular, I'd like to, kind of segment this into the two topics. On the topic of doing more for the homeless, I really appreciate you coming in and talking about some of the opportunities that maybe Lane County could pursue that would use resources or powers that the county has and have that be a springboard to doing more. Things like the church parking lots or county parks or things of that sort are opportunities within the power of the county to pursue, and I think it's a great effort that's being made on your part to come in and talk about that. Regarding the sanctuary state, sanctuary county, sanctuary city movement, I think that since Oregon is a sanctuary state, and maybe you misspoke yourself, Phil, this morning, but I think it was the city council that adopted that resolution. You said something like this body talking to us, but maybe.
We did adopt
Yeah,
the
so,
resolution,
so that resolution and the city's consideration of it will kind of move forward to do more to protect the rights of people that are here, that are under Oregon law, where we want to have a clear statement of sanctuary. And I'm really glad you came in, and I hope to help push this along here. Thank you.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things. Ms. Grant, thank you for your testimony this morning. Some of the things that you've said have been stated for quite some time now, and some of the things Lane County has already taken some steps toward. For instance, through the Human Services Commission, under recommendation from the Poverty and Homelessness Board, we did establish what I believe is the first ever week-round, everyday shelter for homeless people, which is small. I believe it has a space for 60 people, and it is filled to overflowing, and that's located in West Eugene. We've never had that before. We did not have one until this year. In the past, we've had the Egan Warming Centers which open on just the coldest nights. This is a center that's open on a nightly basis. It's not a particularly comfortable place, but it is a place where people can be dry, a little warmer, and they do have opportunities to have a meal there. And it's not someplace they can spend the day, it's just for the night. Additionally, this year, under our winter strategies, that was one of our winter strategies put forward by the Human Services Commission. Additionally, this year, under winter strategies, we've doubled the amount of day parking that is available on Lane County property. And that's out at our behavioral health center. So we did double the amount from last year. Once again, it's an overnight camping area for car camping or camper camping. People have to vacate that during the daytime. It's a parking lot that is used for people who work in the behavioral health center. So we have doubled it. That doesn't mean to say that we've solved the problem. We're also embarking on Operation 600, and we'll see how the climate is regarding tax credits and some of the other things that we need in order to move forward with building more affordable housing. But Operation 600 will provide as many as 600 or more housing first or supportive housing units in Lane County by 2021. We're moving forward. There is more momentum than we've seen before, and we're doing things in more innovative ways. We have tiny houses being built. We do have more capacity and overflow capacity for the Egan warming centers. Once again, we're moving in the right direction. We're still contemplating how better we can coordinate with the City of Eugene, with the City of Springfield, and with other smaller municipalities to make certain that men, women, and children are not out on the streets for the night. Additionally, later on in this meeting, we'll be discussing you see Mr. Manella sitting in the audience behind you right there. We'll be discussing our current plans for supportive housing. So stick around, watch TV, watch the reruns on it. We will be talking about that at length, not just today, but on an ongoing basis. And thank you for your interest, thank you for your concern, and thank you for your well thought out suggestions. I appreciate you being here today. Philip, thank you also for being here today. I thank you for the documents that you provided to me last week. You and I had a good long discussion. We're looking at the documents, seeing how to best move forward and how to best talk to the balance of the county commission and whatever ways we can to make certain that the men, women, and children who live in Lane County know this is a safe place to live, and very specifically that we are not going to tolerate the sorts of abusive behavior that we've seen documented both locally and throughout the country regarding people who all of a sudden find legitimacy in harassing people who otherwise are trying to live a peaceful life. So thank you for being here today, Philip. Take care. Thanks.
Other comments? Yeah, I'd like to also thank the speakers for coming this morning. Commissioner Farr has wrapped up, I think, pretty eloquently the efforts that we're making and our commitment through our administrator on helping folks that are vulnerable and homeless with rest stops and providing more housing. I would also, Phil, just state, I think you are aware of this, but immediately after the election, and there was the tension that was created from that results, our administrator reached out to our staff first and made a commitment reaffirming our strategic plan, our goals, and our the values that we as an organization want to uphold, and also reaffirming that our support and that we're not going to change with our equity and access effort. And then through their help, we made a public statement and received, I had 10 mayors that signed on formally to the effort, and multiple other government bodies that, our statement of unity as a county, and that we are committed that we don't support hatred and discrimination in those activities, and reaffirm that we are here to uphold the state law, as you clearly pointed out, the state laws that govern what our actions are. So I appreciate that, and we'll look to see what further opportunities the board has to reaffirm that we're here to protect and help our citizens in any fashion possible. So thank you for that. Any others? Okay. So with that, at this time, we need to recess the Board of Commissioners and move upstairs for a Housing and Community Services Agency meeting. I would say that that's probably going to take a minimum of 30 minutes, possibly 45 minutes. We have an executive session and 2 items, and then we will come back downstairs here and reconvene the Board of Commissioners for the remainder of our morning session. So staff, I'm sorry, we're going to have to take a little break, but we'll be back.
Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Housing and Community Services Agency of Lane County Board of Commissioners meeting. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda? And public comment today? I have a list. All right. Commissioners' remonstrance? Okay. Oh, I'm
Just
sorry.
wanted to jump in there.
Sorensen.
That's okay, I'll just jump in there. I know that one of the challenges we're going to have in the next year is adapting to and understanding what the new administration in Washington, D.C. is going to be doing. My understanding is that virtually all of the funding for Lane County's housing effort, public housing effort, that's administered by HACSA, comes from federal funding. And federal funding is crucial to providing housing to low-income residents of Lane County. And one of the things that's on my agenda for this year is to try to find out as much as possible and have the HACSA administration keep the board informed of efforts in Washington, D.C., both Congress as well as the new administration, to radically cut, decimate, or otherwise intrude on the role of HACSA in this community because we're so dependent on federal funding for the agency. And I just want to bring this to everybody's attention that this is a very big problem because, as I understand the congressional leaders' comments about public housing funding, as well as the, at this point I guess I call it fear. I don't know how informed the fear is, but fear that there's going to be some radical slashing of this budget, federal budget. So I just think we should all be keeping an eye on that and developing contingency plans in the event that some of these things actually come to fruition within the early part of the new administration.
Thank you. Commissioner Farr?
Thank you, Commissioner Sorensen. That is a concern, making certain that as HUD changes leadership and as HUD goes into a new administrative phase, that we make certain that the priorities that we've established already remain high as far as, at least with our delegation to Washington, D.C., but beyond that. And significantly, in conversations that I've had just recently, another issue that we may be facing is the actual funding for affordable housing beyond the grants, and that is a lot of financing is done through tax credits. St. Vincent de Paul uses tax credits. We use tax credits to actually buy down the cost of the projects. For instance, 6th and Polk, and for instance, future projects for St. Vincent de Paul are contingent upon being able to buy down the actual leveraged amount, the borrowed amount to build a housing. Some of the projects that we have right now, without the tax credit, simply could not work. And not just some, but most all of the credits. And we're in a situation right now where there's a potential for a significant reduction in corporate taxes at the federal level, which potentially could make it less appetizing for corporations to buy tax credits as they have historically, and as they do on a regular basis. A lot of it is purchased by banks, for instance. I believe Wells Fargo buys a lot of tax credits locally. Other banks, some of our local banks don't buy as many tax credits, but potentially that could be one of our avenues to entice people to help us to fund the housing. Because these projects don't work without the purchase of tax credits. We simply cannot get the money leveraged in place without buying the tax credits. Something that we need to talk about, and we can do it at a multifaceted front. We can do it with our local delegation to Salem. We can do it with our local delegation for the Oregon delegation to Washington, D.C. And we can also talk to maybe to local banks to see if they'll be willing to form a consortium of some form to buy tax credits even in what may be a less appetizing market. So there's a lot more to talk about on that, and I am just not knowledgeable about it at all. But I'm knowledgeable enough to talk at the surface level about it, but the depth of it is, it's Operation 600, for instance, may be very, very difficult without the tax credits being available.
Yeah, just a couple quick responses, and then I want to make sure that we keep on our timeline. But I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that has come from this board over the last year and beyond around ways that we can advocate to either maintain or grow HACSA's funding base. I share Commissioner Sorensen's concern, and I think is a very real concern. I also share and appreciate Commissioner Farr's point about the low-income housing tax credit. I'll give you just a real specific example of the tax credit issue. Our project at the Oaks at 14th got over $1 per tax credit. There's about $9 million of tax credits in that project. Tax credit pricing has dropped between 10 and 15 cents on the dollar, so that creates a 900,000 roughly gap in a project like the Oaks at 14th. The Oaks at 14th is okay because we've already secured the tax credit and closed on the financing, but as we think about Richardson Bridge, which we're currently seeking proposals from tax credit investors on, and 6th and Oak, we could have a really big challenge around just making those projects financially viable given the current tax credit investment market. So it's a big concern. And then in terms of the federal funding, we're just frankly worried. And I do think that we need to be proactive in partnership with Lane County and be thinking about how to engage in kind of the United Front legislative advocacy efforts. That's something that Commissioner Lycan has advocated for since I started here. And we've been able to do, but just making sure that we're giving this board and the Lane County board as much information and that we advocate as strategically as possible. So I will work between now and the next meeting with the commissioner just to give you additional information about how I see things playing out. And Commissioner Sorensen's point about contingency planning in terms of potential staff reductions and other expense reductions is certainly something that I'm thinking about.
So when it gets to the advocating part of people going to Salem to advocate, I think would be a really great idea to work on a resident group that could be trained to go up there and advocate, because they tend to listen to stories.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice.
And we don't really have that. We had it for that 1 year, and then all right, so no emergency business. So at this time, let me find my page here. We're going to go into executive session. The HACSA board will meet in executive session to review and evaluate the employment-related performance of the chief executive officer of any public body or public officer, employee, or staff member who does not request an open hearing. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602I, which allows the board to meet in executive session for the purpose listed above. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberation during the executive session except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decisions may be made in executive session. We reserve the right to come back out into public session should the need arise.
is any.
Our public meeting for the Housing and Community Services of Lane County. And we're going to go right into administration. So the first would be the approval of the minutes.
Move approval of the minutes from 11/29/16.
Second.
Any discussion to the motion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, minutes are approved, the motion is passed. And then we're going to go on to B, Order 16-12-13-01H, in the matter of documenting the Executive Director's annual performance evaluation and instructing Human Resources regarding revision of the employment agreement. And that's going to be actually Valerie. So we'll go ahead with
Okay,
that.
well, reading it into the record, as the cover memo to the board order states, Jacob came to HACSA in August of 2013, and in July of 2015 began his tenure as HACSA's executive director. His contract called for a performance review after 1 year, and so right around July of 2016, our Human Resources Manager, Carla Ramsdell, began a process. The process included preparing a survey instrument that she sent out to stakeholders in the community. We think she sent out around 30 and got back around 10. She sent the survey instruments to community partners, to leaders of nonprofit organizations, to HACSA senior managers, and to members of the HACSA union's executive board. The survey instrument asked for feedback in 7 key performance areas, including teamwork, planning, adaptability, innovativeness, communication, problem solving, and leadership. And survey respondents were invited to give comments of excellent work and perhaps work that could use improvement. And respondents were asked to give a rating on a scale of 0 to 5 stars. So in all of the key areas, Jacob was given 4 stars, except for innovativeness, where he was given 5 stars. A sample of verbatim comments from the survey instrument is included in the board packet, and I just picked out some words to give a flavor of the feedback. And those words include vision, team success, phenomenal, solid follow-through, passion, amazing support, and stellar job. I did not get my survey turned in time, and just am taking the opportunity to add my own thoughts. And that in the handful of CEOs that I've worked with, I've seen a variety of strengths and weaknesses. Some are great at one thing and lacking at another thing. And my experience with Jacob is he brings all the important tools to the table. He's great in the community, he's great with his senior managers, and he is attentive to line staff. And his passion for our mission is obvious every day in every meeting. The process that we're doing here today is to have me introduce and summarize the remarks from the survey, for Jacob to give a small state of the agency address to the board, and then for the board to make their own comments for the record, and then vote on a motion to extend Jacob's contract and adjust his compensation.
Well, what I wanted to do is just highlight a few accomplishments and a few challenges that we face as an organization. I think we have a good system in place in terms of monitoring my performance and the organization's performance through our strategic plan. And our board of directors gets 2 reports a year that summarizes the accomplishments that we've made as an organization. So we're not starting from scratch. None of this will surprise you. In terms of key accomplishments, one of the challenges for the organization when I arrived was diversifying our revenue streams. We've done that primarily through our real estate development activities where we're able to achieve a developer fee, and we've received 3 low-income housing tax credit allocations in the past 3 years, and that's been a big step towards diversifying our revenue. The other thing that we've done is diversified our staff, both in terms of ethnicity and then also experience and skill sets. So it was clear to me when I started that the senior management team, specifically and the management team more directly, needed just diversified skill sets. So we've been able to hire people like Valerie, like Steve Oakes, like Ella Kubak, and other members that are really bringing a different level of attention and a different level of focus for the organization, and that's resulted in us being much healthier, much more grounded as an organization. We've improved our customer service. When we went out and talked to the community before updating our strategic plan, the theme was that HACSA needed to improve its customer service. We've done that in a variety of ways. Just a couple quick examples. We've done some lobby updates at our Fairview building, and we plan to do some in our Eugene Day Island building. And the idea is just to make the experience more customer friendly. We also have a new policy where when people come in, they get an immediate face-to-face attention from staff, and that hasn't always been the approach historically. We've built quality control and compliance systems. Our systems really need a lot of attention, and I'm very grateful to report that our division directors have taken that very seriously, and there's quality control and compliance reviews happening monthly, and the staff are getting direct feedback about the condition of their files and their work responsibilities under the umbrella of that system. The last thing I'd note in terms of accomplishments is that we're playing a more focused role in the community. We are active on the Poverty and Homelessness Board. I serve on that board with Commissioner Farr. And we're also serving special needs in the community. So an example of that is the partnership we have with sponsors and the project on Oak Patch and 14th that will serve people returning to Lane County after completing their time and conditions of prison sentences. In terms of challenges, we continue to need to invest time and money in building out our business systems and refining our quality control and compliance systems. The senior management team at HACSA, and I'd say all managers, have more to do than can be accomplished in the time we have at work every week. So we're all at capacity or close to capacity. And then there's a lot of uncertainty about the new presidential administration and what that can mean for our federal funding, and then our use of the low-income housing tax credit. So those are a highlight of the accomplishments and challenges, and I'll turn it back to you shortly.
All right. Any comments?
Thanks. Jacob, when you first came to HACSA, I had probably more opportunities to interface with you, serving in different capacities. You're a member, I believe you're still a member of the Workforce Partnership Board. You're also a member of the Poverty and Homeless Board, and also instrumental in moving housing projects, whether it's in Springfield or downtown here, Eugene, or out on your partnership with sponsors. So, those activities allowed me to interface with you, and I've been very impressed with you as an individual and what you bring to those meetings. You don't just sit back. You're an active participant. You're not just filling your calendar with meeting after meeting after meeting. You bring a specific skill set and are a major contributor in the efforts that are taking place. So I really appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that you're looking at a different model. I think in the 12 years that I've been on this board, really in it, and I don't fault anybody. The goal has been we're going to provide as much housing to people as we possibly can, and if we're going to have to make cuts, we're going to cut back in areas that don't directly impact the individual that's in the system and that we're helping. But what I like, what you're bringing to the table and the direction that you're taking us is that you understand that the challenges that you face with the housing infrastructure that we have in place. Take, for instance, down in Cottage Grove with the Riverview Terrace. I mean, we experienced, here's an older facility that we experienced not only one elevator, but both elevators went on the fritz and put the people that lived in that facility and really in jeopardy. And what I appreciated, and we got some criticism about it, and that, but what I really appreciated was the fact that you went out of your way with staff to find ways to accommodate those folks. I personally didn't get any complaints to me other than somebody that was representing an individual. But I really appreciate the fact that you worked with the city manager, you worked with the principals at hand and made sure that the citizens there were in the best care that they possibly could. So understanding that we have older housing stock, I appreciate the vision that we're going to try to rotate that housing stock into something new, which, instead of just having the status quo, we're going to sell off our properties. We're going to reinvest those properties in creating more housing opportunities, which is going to elevate the housing stock in our communities, and I really appreciate it. It's also going to put us in a better position. It's easier to maintain something that's brand new than it is something that's 40, 50 years old that, is a challenge because it's very expensive. So, Jacob, I think, from where I sit in my interaction with you, I believe you're doing a great job, and I appreciate the fact that you said it's been a little bit more challenging, this position, than what you thought it might be when you first took it. But I'm glad that you're there and you're willing to continue, because AXA is doing great work in Lane County, and we need it to continue to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Jacob, first of all, I must tell you, it's nice to hear the remarks from people outside the community on how you're doing. A couple questions for you. So you mentioned business systems, quality control systems. Are those one-time financial challenges that you have to invest? Are they ongoing? What's going on there as far as because you felt like you're 12 years behind based on observations of other organizations. So from a financial standpoint, where do you see that? One-time financial challenges, or is it ongoing?
It's a combination of both. Where it's a one-time cost is when we invest in new systems, like we recently invested in a kind of a paperless file system. And that has been a kind of a challenge up front, but it will add a lot of efficiency over time. And then there's quality control reporting capabilities within that system. So that's an example of a one-time investment. In terms of ongoing investment, part of why we were behind is that we didn't invest in ongoing training and education of staff, both at the management level and line staff level. And no matter how tough things get financially, my personal philosophy is that you always have to stay up to speed on the latest requirements of your funding sources. So we'll always invest in staff training and education. Related to that, it's also about how you organize your time. And our division directors have both added division analyst positions, and between the division director, the division managers, and these analysts, they actually sit down and sample a certain number of contracts every month. And then if there's mistakes that are found, they determine whether that's an individual's mistake or like a team mistake. If it's an individual mistake, then you address that with the individual. But if it's a team mistake, then you develop a training program to make sure that staff don't continue to make those mistakes. So again, we are doing a lot of upfront investment, and then we'll continue to just to make sure staff are organized and have the resources.
Well, I appreciate that, and I really view it this way. I know you're attentive anytime we hear from a constituent, and I really appreciate that. But as an executive director and as a member of the board, I mean, I had the opportunity to serve as a trustee at Northwest Christian when it was Christian College, and we hired a president to take us to Christian University. So, so as a board trustee member, our responsibility was, first of all, we wanted to make sure that the transition was working, that those new systems would be built in, moving into as a full meal deal small university, enrollment, where that is, financially where the school is. Today, I can tell you, it's rocking and rolling from a small university standpoint. And so I'm viewing this really this way, who you surround yourself with. I was able to work with Valerie when I was former mayor of the city of Springfield. Got to see her. Got to see, now you have Steve on board. And I got to tell you, frankly, I view it this way. You should always be confident enough to feel like what you're doing is you're hiring the very people that can replace you. That's my opinion. And I think you've done that. And so, as an executive director, you're in a sense, you're the general manager of this operation. And you have hired key people. And key people, I think, that are able to make sure that they work with you. The transition continues to be positive. I will tell you that from what you've told me and just listening on the business systems quality control, how you view HACSA into the future, I think the job is only going to get better. And but I think it really comes down to the people that you're surrounding yourself with. That's a sign, to me, that's a sign of a good senior executive director, general manager of an operation, is just that. And I want to congratulate you on really, because I think it really it's a telltale. And by the way, I do appreciate now the fact that we are having more HACSA meetings than when I was first elected. I think it's important just to keep the board apprised. We're not here to tell you what to do. Instead, we want to hear from you on what's going on with the organization. And yeah, there is a transition with the new administration. Don't cry wolf yet. Okay, all right. So, we'll have to kind of wait and see where that goes. But I want to say, just from who you have brought on, I think is a good sign of your professionalism and your leadership of the organization. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Sorensen.
I just wanted to say a few things in support of your work, Jacob. I too got some emails about the elevator in Cottage Grove, and I do really appreciate how seriously you took all that. And I think that shows, beyond that one thing, responsiveness, which I think is an important quality in public officials, whether they're appointed or elected. And I think that that sort of access and responsiveness is a great characteristic to carry on with, even though you have to make a decision many times between what to delegate and what to handle, or at least to monitor and more actively. So I do appreciate that. And I also appreciate the professionalism, not only of you, but also the staff that we see here and present materials to us. That's really refreshing, and I appreciate the support you give to professional staff, because that's evident in the confidence that people have when they come in and present. So thank you very much.
So I don't want to keep us here repeating what other people have said, so I'll just basically say I agree with everything you said so far. And just add that, watching the process of the development of 14th Notes and the way that you dealt with the neighbors and the public and all was, really great to watch that, the public involvement. There's always going to be the one or two naysayers anytime you make a change in the neighborhood, it's people's neighborhood. But you did a really good job, I think, leading that effort, dealing with that, and I really appreciate the asset management focus. Having been an asset manager myself, so I think you're headed in some great directions, and you're doing a good job.
Well, I would just like to say that I've been able to work with you for quite some time, and one of the things I did say to you kind of in the beginning was I thought the customer service needed some work, and one of my comments was one couldn't exist without the other. So if you didn't have low-income residents, you wouldn't have Hacksaw. So, you know, it was a balance there, and it needed to be a team. And we had a discussion about that, and you just totally you were on the same wavelength as I was with that. And I just really see from, you know, my comments from residents, you know, the things that I hear that people are really feeling better about the communication that's happening between staff and residents. And I really appreciate that. Commissioner Fox.
Thank you. I spoke in executive session.
You did, yeah.
You know, just a couple of things, Jacob. I like everything that everybody said, so I won't repeat it. But, you know, I understand the difficulty of stepping into an organization that's been run by other people for a long, long time. When I went to Food for Lane County, I stepped into an organization. I was replacing the founding director. And I found a lot of things that needed some adjustment. But I found a lot of I personally, when I did that, found a lot of things that were in great shape. And I believe that you've done the same thing. You found things that needed to be adjusted. You found things that were in great shape. And you recognized the difference, and you made certain, you strengthened the things that were in great shape, and you addressed the things in an undaunted fashion. I'll say that word, undaunted. It's pretty formidable, some of the things that you addressed over the course of the last 18 months, and you've done it systematically, and you've surrounded yourself with great people who help you do it on a daily basis. I really appreciate that, and I'm pleased and proud to work alongside you as the HACSA director. I think the direction HACSA is going right now is a direction everybody's going to be pleased with in the future. And I'll just harken back to my first real interaction with you. It was a chance that you and I had to tour some housing facilities in Portland that you had been a part of creating when you were working in Multnomah County. And saw some very good work up there. I had a chance to see some of my housing first projects there. Some great day use centers and good residential facilities. But significantly, you and I had a chance to walk around the streets of Portland doing nothing but kind of killing time for a while, talking about your visions and your dreams for HACSA. Before I even knew you, and you talked about things like project-based structure and finding new ways to fund and innovative ways to create housing for the people who need the housing in Lane County. We're doing it. You're doing it. I'm proud to be a part of that. Thank you, Jacob.
Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point on the board order. So the board order is requesting a pay raise of 5%. I would just say on the record that my position is significantly below market compared to other executive directors. And Faye, you and Char talked about that when I started as the executive director. But rather than look at comps for my position, what felt best for the agency was to look at the management positions across the board. We are having troubles recruiting positions. We get very few applicants. So we are in a process of doing a class compensation study, and we will come back with that. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. The other thing I'd mention is that the board order is asking for authorization for Char to execute my employment contract. There would be no material changes recommended to that contract, but I think it's prudent for the HACSA board to have Char have our attorney just do a quick review like we did last year with legal counsel from the county and just see if there's any unmaterial updates that need to be made. So I just wanted to let you all know that that my recommendation to the chair is that she review that contract with legal counsel and make any necessary immaterial changes. And I'm not requesting any additional benefits or changes to my benefits other than the 5%.
Madam Chair, if you're ready for a motion, I'm ready to make one.
I am ready.
I move move passage of order 16-12-13-01H in the matter of documenting the executive director's annual performance evaluation and instructing human resource regarding revision of the employment agreement.
Second.
The only addition, I believe when I was vice chair that I worked with Shar with reviewing the employment agreement contract. I would recommend that Commissioner Farby
Yes.
would assist the chair in that too.
I'll take that as a friendly amendment.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, this motion is passed unanimously. We're going to go on to C, Order 16121302H in the matter of authorizing a grant from Meyer Memorial Trust to HACSA. Steve Oakes.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. I guess I'm pleased to announce that Meyer Memorial Trust has granted HACSA $200,000 for the Oaks at 14th project. Sponsors Incorporated did the majority of the groundwork on this grant, and just kind of the way it's getting approved to the partnership, it'll actually have to come to HACSA. But I was out there when the Meyer Memorial folks were able to come visit the project when it was early in construction. They were just super impressed. They'd mentioned that it was, there's nothing like this really happening, and everybody sees the extreme need for it. And so it was really nice to see, and kind of really shows that how everybody else is now seeing also how much this project is needed. And with the mounting legal fees and land use part of it going on, this is really going to help, and also be used to help just improve the project, because typically we have to go in pretty bare bones to get funded, and this will really allow us to do some nice things for the units and really help out the folks moving in here. So by approving this, it would authorize Shar and Jacob to sign the actual grant agreement, and then from then on, Jacob and Valerie to sign any other needed documents in order to bring the money into the partnership. So if anybody has any questions or...
Ready for a motion, Madam Chair?
Yes, I am.
I move Order 161213-02A in the matter of authorizing a grant from Meyer Memorial Trust to HACSA.
Second.
Any further discussion? I don't know. Commissioner Bozovich and then Commissioner.
So I just wanted, once again, this is kind of an example of diversifying our revenue stream. I think it's a really good thing, but I just want to say this kind of adds in, now we have private sector contributing to this project. This is a project where we can see it's multiple agency collaboration, because the local public safety coordinating council actually put funds into this project also, which is joint of the counties and the cities. So the funding sources for this project are multiple now, and it's really a great thing to see folks recognize the importance of this project and the collaboration involved. This is federal, state, county, public safety monies, and now private trust money that are all going into this project. So it's a great thing to see.
And I would just add that I think since I've been on this board, this is probably the first time that I've seen Meyer Memorial get involved in this type of a project in our community. To me, it really opens the door for the future when you get somebody. I mean, this is a substantial grant, and their commitment to coming into the community and working with us, and as you're able to show them other opportunities in the community, I believe that it's just going to spur additional investments. It's also, it seems like once you get one organization to step up and contribute, then others follow. And you might see the Oregon Community Foundation, you might see other large funders that would be willing to make similar investments in other projects. So congratulations, and I know it's a partnership between sponsors and us, but it benefits everybody, and I just, it's exciting to see that just another step forward in the progress that our partnerships in this great organization is making. So congratulations.
I'll just say this is an indication of the collaboration that we're engaged with as HACSA, with the nonprofits and with sponsors in particular in this one, working with St. Vincent de Paul and others, and a $200,000 Meyer grant. That doubles my best ever.
Any further discussion? All right, then. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, this motion has passed. And if there is no other business, then any other business? All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Great.
Thank you.
I'd like to reconvene the Lane County Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, December 13th. We'll start off with item number 1. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? I will just note that we do have an 11:30 time certain. Anything else? I'll go ahead and just in case we did have public comment earlier this morning at 9 o'clock, I will open public comment again. Is there anyone that didn't have the opportunity to speak this morning that would like to speak now? Okay. Item 3 is Commissioner's response and or other issues or remonstrance. Is there anything more that the board would like to add this morning? Okay. I don't believe there's emergency business, but Mr. Mokharski?
There is none.
All right, then item 5 is the consent calendar. We have several items on there today. These items are considered to be routine by the Board of Commissioners. If there's any questions, the items can be pulled from the agenda and discussed further. Just for the public, you can go to lanecounty.org and click on today's agenda. Meeting and agenda, and each of these items have supplemental documents that can be viewed that help folks understand the items. So if there's no questions about the consent calendar, Commissioner Bozovich?
So I'll move approval of the December 13th, 2016 consent calendar.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimous. Item number 6 is our county council. I'll start off, Mr. Clark. Is there any announcements from council today?
Not that I've been aware of, no.
Okay.
Made aware of.
Then we'll move to item B, which is the first reading and setting the second reading and public hearing for ordinance 16-10 in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 9 to revise air quality provisions. We have with us today Mr. Andy Clark, our assistant county counsel. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners and Chair. Thank you. This, as you indicated, is the first reading for a proposed code change to deal with air quality issues around the Oak Ridge area. Folks from Oak Ridge came to the board a while ago, months ago, requesting some additional authority to deal with property located outside the city limits where they wanted to be the ability to regulate certain air quality issues, didn't have that authority and asked the board to help them with that. And the board asked me to work with them to put something together. What the first reading is for is an amendment to Chapter 9 that would expand geographically, fairly limited in scope, but it would expand the authority of the city, and actually in this case El Rapa, to regulate some air quality issues in the urban growth boundary of Oak Ridge. And so, as usual, that's what the board would be doing here is delegating to El Rapa the ability to regulate in the area between the city limits and the urban growth boundary of Oak Ridge. Currently, the code, excuse me, delegates to El Rapa the authority to regulate within the metro boundary, the Eugene Springfield metro boundary. So it's that area between the city limits and metro. As you know, the landscape there is changing a bit, and so rather than the metro boundary, my work with Merlin Huff at El Rapa, he indicated it would be better to change that scope to be just the urban growth boundaries of the two cities, as we sort of align that with the state law about urban growth boundaries for Eugene and Springfield. And so the proposed change would do those two things. That is, grant to El Rapa authority to regulate within the urban transition area around Oak Ridge, as well as that same area, urban transition areas around the cities of Springfield and Eugene. And again, this is the first reading of that, and the motion is to set the second reading and a hearing for
January 10th, 1:30.
Correct.
Okay. So questions for Commissioner Bozovich?
No questions. I was going to make a motion. I was going to move approval of the first reading and setting the second reading and public hearing for ordinance number 1610 for January 10th, 2017 at 1:30 p.m.
Second.
Second. Comments? I guess I would just like to state, Mr. Clark, I want to thank you for your work on this. As a former member of the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency, LRAPA, and Commissioner Bozovich is now the representative, I believe. Oak Ridge has been in non-containment for several years and has been working very diligently trying to improve the air quality conditions on specific days, generally winter months when folks are using their wood stoves. And they've had aggressive upgrade, I guess, grants that allow folks to upgrade to newer technology stoves that are better with scrubbing the air and air quality. But the real challenge is that they're still not, in some cases, meeting the new standards in that area. And I believe that this will help them try to get a handle on it. And ultimately, this is critical for the community as a whole because of the fact that it's difficult to locate any new industry or new businesses that require air quality permits and approvals. And right now with the challenges, it's hard to approve those. So hopeful that as we go through the process and we hear from the public and if these changes can be made, hopefully they can bring Oak Ridge into I guess the standards that the federal government has made, and hopefully that'll open up some doors for industry to look to locating in Oak Ridge. So, Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you, and I just want to add to that Oak Ridge is very close to making attainment, and this may be just the tool they need to get to attainment. They just need to finish out this year basically without any violations, and they'll make attainment, and then they just have to go into maintenance. I want to just note for the record that my intent was the hearings in Harris Hall. I think I forgot that in the motion.
1:30.
1:30 in Harris Hall.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you.
So item 7 is our county administration. Let's start off, Mr. Malkahysky, do you have some announcements?
Would you like me to hold, Mr. Chair, so you can get through the housing presentation and then to the, I'm happy to do that.
Sure. We got folks here that are waiting, so we'll move to item B then. It's a discussion on Housing First, supportive housing update. See Ms. Hayes is in the background, so we'll look towards Mr. Manella and Mr. Fox. Steve Manella is our Division Manager for Human Services, and Mr. Fox is the Housing and Community Services Agency Executive Director. Welcome.
Welcome. Chair Stewart, members of the Board of Commissioners, we're very excited this morning to come back and give you an update on our Housing First efforts. We were last here in June, and what I have to say is that the Poverty and Homelessness Board and the members of our team who are working on Housing First are really taking a big lift and being very ambitious in what we hope to accomplish. The Poverty and Homelessness Board's key goal is something that we're dubbing Operation 600, and came up with this because we were so successful with the Veterans 365 project that we wanted to create a vision for the community that within a 5-year period between now and 2021, when we have the World Games here in town, that we can shelter or house anyone who is homeless who wants to come inside. You know, in recent years, we've talked about a lot of efforts that get people under sort of temporary situations, and our public health director has been here and talked about the impact that that has on our public health. And So we're seeing, with this goal, we're seeing alignment. As recently as last week, you all had a presentation on the CHIP, and as a part of that presentation, supportive housing was a #1 goal. The PSCC is working on behavioral health and the intersection of behavioral health and law enforcement. And as a part of those goals, supportive housing is a key goal. And then I believe additionally, last week when you were meeting as a Board of Commissioners, you included supportive housing as part of your strategic plan. So you see the communities coming together. So you saw before on the first slide, you saw a sketch. And I think last time we did a presentation, we showed you what another community had done in Colorado. Here in Madison, Wisconsin, this is Rethick Terrace, 60-unit development that was done there as a Housing First that was recently opened back in June. And so you see that we go inside the facility and you see that a dream, something that we put out as an architectural sketch, can become a reality. And the goal of 600 units is very attainable. It takes a community to do this work. Lane County is not embarked on this work to do this work alone. It'll take the efforts of all of our local governments, of many of our community members in order to do this work. And here's the payoff. The remarkable thing about supportive housing and Housing First is that a person who, like this woman who'd been homeless for over 4 years, and 2 months earlier, if you would have seen her, you wouldn't have recognized her. And by having the provision of housing available, she becomes a happy human being.
Great. So I think Steve highlighted some important milestones that the Lane County Board has achieved, and I wanted to highlight a few more as I sort of kick off the next section of this presentation. So as you all know, our work at the Housing and Community Services Agency is to be the go-to affordable housing provider in our community, and there's a lot of tools that we have as a housing authority that we haven't yet utilized in our community, and project-based Section 8 is just one of a handful of examples. Steve talked about the BCC's approval of the PHB strategic plan, and it's really important to have a focused strategic plan, and this board has approved one. The third bullet's really just to highlight just a partnership between Lane County Law Enforcement and the Housing and Community Services Agency, and I'll show you a more detailed picture, but we really came together to deliver an incredible project at the Oaks of 14th, and this project will serve people that have completed their prison sentence and are coming back to Lane County, the place they call home. This board has also approved recently a development plan for 6th and Oak, and the idea here is that this board is dedicated to the affordable housing needs in our community. And we'll get into this in a little more detail, but you've permitted pre-development assessments of county-owned properties, which is a national best practice where local jurisdictions, counties, cities dedicate land for affordable housing development. So this must have been 18 months or so ago, but the county administrator and the board allowed Steve and other Lane County staff to assess Lane County-owned properties to determine whether there were any viable sites for affordable housing development. And Steve and his team did a lot of great work, but there are 2 parcels that rose to the surface as kind of the primary options for affordable housing. The first site is on the Surbu campus, directly adjacent to behavioral health, and I'll talk in more depth about the work we're doing on that site. And then Steve will talk about a new site that's being looked at in more depth, and that's the one adjacent to the fairgrounds on West 13th. So let me see here. So I talked about the Oaks at 14th, and we just wanted to show you the progress.
Sounds oddly like the music from SimCity.
This is how Jacob gets so much done. So that project is eight months into construction, and Commissioner Stewart was there and gave a great kind of encouragement speech, but it really shows what you can actually accomplish in a short period of time. The other thing we want to highlight is we recently opened Bascom Village to Commissioner Farr was able to attend that event. And this is really, as Steve pointed out, this is really about the people. This is about people in our community that need our help. And this gentleman was a homeless veteran living in his car with a 13-year-old son. And we moved him into Bascom Village, and it ended his homelessness. And we do that many times over in our community, and we need to do more. So this is an aerial view of the Bascom Village opening, and our intent here is just to show you the types of projects that we can deliver for our community. And again, this project is leasing up as we speak and serving our community as we speak. I want to talk a little bit about the work we've done on this Surbu campus site. So the first step in any affordable housing pre-development activity is a land use assessment and an environmental review. And we've completed that for the Surbu campus, and it does indicate that affordable housing development is a viable option for that site. The other thing that's significant is that Steve's done a lot of research nationally, and Housing First is happening across the nation. One of the things that's really unique about this site is to be able to have a Housing First development directly adjacent to the behavioral health building. I've just never heard of adjacency like that, and so I think we have a really unique opportunity in this community. So we've completed land use. We are currently developing what's called the schematic design. That's actually the last bullet. So we do have a team actively working on schematic design. And then once they have the schematic design complete, then you have a construction company start to deliver some costing, and you use that costing to refine your financial pro forma. The other thing that's unique about these buildings, and I think Steve's pictures highlighted this, is that there's a lot of needs of the residents that are unique, and you need to have the first floor or the common space really well thought through and designed with input from the people that actually serve this population, and Steve's been bringing those folks to the table. So you all are pretty familiar with the Surbu campus site, but we just kind of wanted to footprint in what the building would look like in terms of scale and next to the behavioral health building. And this is just our first run at what the first floor would look like, and I guess I'd highlight a couple things for you. First is that this will have a lot more social service space than a typical affordable housing building. The folks in this building would be met with by a case manager multiple times per week, so that's why there's extra space. There's also some light medical assessments that can happen in a building like this. Anything from wound care to blood pressure checks, and that's the exam room with the question marks up there in the kind of the upper right-hand corner. And then this is kind of what we call a floor plate of what the actual units could look like. And one of the things I'd point out is that we want to keep the square footage of these units
small. And that creates a more cost-effective building, and it also encourages people, once they've stabilized and gotten their health, both physical and mental, improved, that we want them to move out of this building so that this building can serve as many chronically homeless people as possible. So the other thing I'd mention before I turn it back over to Steve is that you all are aware of the frequent user system engagement work that Alicia, Karen, and Steve are engaged in. It's very innovative work, and the idea on this Urbu campus building is that this building would serve folks that are frequent users of public services, so in and out of hospital, emergency rooms, in and out of jail. And the idea is that once you get them in a building like this and stabilize them, it really saves costs for other parts of Lane County or other systems like the hospitals. And with that, I'll turn it over to Steve.
So the next part of our effort is really a need to look at how we keep children safe. And the county in Health and Human Services and our youth services in Human Services, behavioral health, a number of different areas, we really focus on youth safety. And we have a number of families, particularly women with children, who've been in either domestic violence situations or they're in the child welfare system. And the reason that they're in the child welfare system isn't that they're not they're in the child welfare system because the kids have not been able to get their basic needs met. And it's classified as caretaker neglect. And a lot of times it has an economic component to it, along with perhaps alcohol and drug substance abuse. And so these families need a place to recover. And the other thing that we want to do is we want to keep families together. Oftentimes, if these young mothers or parents don't go into treatment, and they can end up losing their children. And what we see now is we see a large number of families who are homeless. I think in your packet we provided information on the Department of Education's recent census of school kids who are coming to school homeless. And I think the Bethel district in particular had 9% of the kids coming to school who are homeless. Now, that definition of homeless includes families that are doubled up. And this year, as a part of our initiative, and Commissioner Farr mentioned earlier some of our winter efforts, but we implemented a homeless diversion program for homeless children and families. And I have to say, already this year, we've kept close to 100 families housed, diverted from becoming homeless. But this is an important effort. So what we're looking at is we need to identify a place where we could build such housing. And what I need to say is, unlike the first project that we discussed, this project is very preliminary in our discussions. And one of the sites that has been identified as a possibility for discussion was this residentially zoned property that the Fair Board had acquired some time ago for expansion. You'll see there's a cut-in along 13th Avenue. So part of the reason for acquisition of additional property, as I understand it, was so that there would be access to the fairgrounds from 13th Street on that part of the property. So the part of the property that we're looking at potentially would continue to allow for that access. Something that Jacob didn't mention about the MLK site, one of the things that we've discussed around the MLK site is we want to improve the parking around the building that we're developing. and we're going to maintain a relationship with the University of Oregon and be able to provide parking. Similarly, on this site, if it were to be considered, we would hope to have the same kind of symbiotic relationship where by virtue of having the project there, it would be an improvement, and the improvement could have additional benefits for development of the adjacent property for fairground use. And again, this is a vision. Again, this is a multi-family housing first structure that was built this last year in Appleton, Wisconsin, and it just shows you what's possible when we put our heads together. Any questions?
Oh, sorry. Questions for Steve or Jacob? Commissioner Farr?
Well, fewer questions than comments. This is a pretty exciting presentation. You know, we've identified Housing First as the most significant way to use our limited housing dollars and our housing efforts. And I'd like to point out that we're not the first to consider that. That you know, Utah's Housing First model has been very much heralded, and this is different than ours. And Utah has different resources in place than we could potentially provide. But you know, I guess I'll take it back to Operation 600. Let's talk about that very, very specifically. We're planning to add 600. This is a strategy of the Poverty and Homelessness Board. We're planning to add 600 Housing First units between now and the year 2021. Coincidentally, the year that the games are going to be here in Eugene, just coincidentally. And the number 600 is achievable, and it's only achievable through the type of collaborative efforts that we're looking at right now, and through the type of innovative thinking as far as land use is concerned. When we first started talking about the behavioral health facility, gosh, what was that, 2 years ago probably? And we kind of walked out there. There were a number of issues that we had, but really we got pretty excited right from the very beginning, especially something that you pointed out, Jacob, that the adjacency of our behavioral health facility. One of the important elements of Housing First is making certain that the people who are being housed have the regular and responsive supportive care. And if you look at the first floor of that Housing First facility, the one that we're proposing for the behavioral health side, that's what the first floor is all about, is the supportive care. The smaller living quarters upstairs are certainly an essential part of people bringing their lives around and receiving the service, receiving the treatments that are required to get them through their issues. But you're looking at one exam room, meeting rooms, community access rooms. It really is a model that is going to be once again an exciting and working model. Jacob, you and I toured and Steve, actually the three of us, toured the facility in Portland, which is the Bud Clark Center. Very different kind of facility than the one we're presenting here. That one has a day use area on the ground floor that really is accessible by a range of homeless people or people who need that kind of the day use service. And it's in conjunction with residential services upstairs. It's not necessarily the most friendly model to the people who are recovering upstairs, when people downstairs many of them aren't in the mode of recovery or aren't even seeking recovery. So the model that we're providing here is a step up from what I've seen in Portland, and one that really, once again, is an exciting element of our Operation 600. And this is a 50-unit proposal. The one that Behavioral Health Center gives is close to 10% of the way there. And, you know, when taken in conjunction with the fact that the frequent user system engagement project that we're engaged in has identifying a very small number of people who are using a great placing a great demand on the limited resources that we have. Most of those people will be housed in these Housing First projects and therefore receiving the immediate care that they are now seeking through emergency rooms. So it's pretty exciting. We can talk more about other opportunities in on different county properties, but really what we're doing right now is something that really there's not very much been done elsewhere in the nation at the level that we're proposing. So I'm excited to hear what the other members of the board have to say about that.
Commissioner Sorensen?
Could you go back to the fairgrounds? Now, are you talking about just lot 1, or are you talking about lots 1, 2, 3, and 4?
All 4.
All 4, okay. And I've talked with the neighborhood group about this, and they seem supportive of it. I've also been told that the fairgrounds needs that property for events, and that a conflict might exist between homeless people being there and fairgrounds opportunities. What efforts would be made to make sure that that conflict wouldn't be there?
Well, I need to say this project that we're talking about will predominantly be women and children, so I don't think there's any conflict with the type of population that we're talking about there. And again, I think this is a site that has been identified, and the discussion needs to go on with the Fair Board and for your consideration with the other uses. But as I mentioned earlier, the idea would be to improve the surface around the facility so that potentially there could be a design that could accommodate fair use, and also the other days of the year accommodate the housing on the property. So that would be the idea. But like I said, it's very preliminary, so we haven't even had that discussion.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd just like to add a few things. So the development process is a process of collaboration, and when you build in a neighborhood like this, you engage with the neighbors, and the fairground staff and board obviously will be a key partner in the effort. The other thing that I think is important for folks to know is that once women and children move into this building, they're not homeless. So I think there's a lot of times a lot of stigma that when you build a development like this, that it just attracts homeless people, and people, it's chaotic, and it's the exact opposite.
Well, I thought, though, that one of the benefits of the Housing First model is that it does provide a place for people who are homeless to drop in. So could you clarify that? So only people that live there would be allowed to go in there, or is it more open to the idea that, well, we want people to get services, we don't want them to be, shooed away? Could you kind of tease it out for me?
Yeah, the Housing First really is a residential model, and so most Housing First facilities have requirements around guests, and so specifically what they're not wanting to do is attract other people, and the management usually is folks who are housed, who have been with people who are unhoused, oftentimes want to make their spaces available to people who are unhoused, and so there are very specific policies around that, so that and what we know from practice is there aren't a lot of issues around that.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why, as Commissioner Farr mentioned, when we looked at the project in Portland, one of the things that we heard from the staff there was that if they were to do it again, they wouldn't have put day access along with the residential because then it creates a situation where you have people who are unhoused, and the people who are housed upstairs, it incentivizes them wanting to give the opportunity for other people to.
Okay. Where does the money come from to build this building?
So one of the critical things is donated land to these projects is a really big contribution. And then the primary source of funds is the low-income housing tax credit. So if this project is 10 million, which is, sort of give or take what we think it could be, you would get 9/10 or approximately 9 million of that through the low-income housing tax credit program.
What's the timeline to build this?
Well, we would like to have the this one or the MLK.
Well, this one.
Oh, this one. Probably, MLK we're looking at for 1919 by the time it would be built. And the timeline is largely due to the fact that we'd have to apply in the next round for the tax credit program. The state of Oregon should have some bonding funding available after January that we'll be able to apply for. And hopefully we'll be successful with that. But with the 9% tax credit program, the state of Oregon only makes those dollars available, the tax credits available on an annual basis, and they're limited. So one of the things we'll be looking at, and we really haven't discussed yet for the second project, is there are alternatives to using the tax credit program, and that's something that we haven't done in this community. Most of the development that we've done has been with the tax credit, but there are other bonding and other types of operations. The challenge is that the people that we're talking about housing here have incomes that are less than 30% of median income. That's an income of $1,000 or less a month. And in order to make those projects pencil out, you have to have more subsidy in the project. So, we hope also, we want to recruit some additional people from the private sector to be part of our supportive housing and shelter work group that's working on the development, because we need some fresh ideas about how we might go about reaching this goal. Again, like I said, this isn't only going to be Lane County government and HACSA, but we're hoping that the nonprofit sector and the private sector, pitch in achieving the goal.
Mr. Mokayski.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add, in response to Commissioner Sorensen's question about the potential for conflicting uses, and provide a little bit of context that a big part of the reason that we're having this discussion today is because you have a joint meeting with the Fair Board tomorrow. There has been speculation about potential uses of this property, both at the MLK, the Surbu campus, and off of 13th Avenue in front of the Event Center. And we wanted to have this discussion with the board today to sort of set the stage for the concepts that are being considered, so we know what we're talking about and we know what we're not talking about, that these are both permanent housing, supportive housing models that we're looking at. I think the question about conflicting uses is a fair one, and you're going to hear from both the staff at Lane Event Center and from, I think, the Fair Board about this existing property is used for overflow parking, for RV parking for certain events. There have been thoughts in the past about the need for expansion. Of course, we know that property is constrained already, and so that original acquisition, I think, was with the intent of this property was intended to allow for that expansion. So you're going to hear that, and that's an important discussion to understand what. How, if this project, if a supportive housing model were to move forward, how do we work together to make sure that that the operations of the event center and the future of the event center and the events that are hosted there can live in compatibility with a supportive housing project. And then I'll also say the fairgrounds, Corey Buller and the Lane Events Center staff and the Fair Board are all going to be working, and we are all going to be working on a long-range facility assessment and a long-range master plan for the property. So this is all sort of coming together at the same time here. So there's a lot of things that are still up in the air, but we wanted to make sure that what we're talking about is on the table so we can further the discussion.
Okay. Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you. First, I just want to say I'm a long-time supporter of the idea of supportive housing. I think, some of the solutions that are being thrown up for temporary, part of the problem with them is they don't deal with the root cause of why somebody's on the street in the first place. And supportive housing is designed to deal with those. And the whole point is you get folks in a controlled environment with a staffed lobby where we don't get they're not inviting in their past peers that actually may have been part of the behavior problems that led to the homelessness, such as the addictions and everything else. And that we've got those folks there that are doing that intensive case management, which we talked about last week in our behavioral health audit, and the need for case management and dealing with some of these mental health issues, which are also driving sometimes addiction issues, and the combination of the two that is quite often in the homeless population. Also, there's some of the physical things that the disabilities and all that drives some of the homelessness, that we have the ability maybe even to help with some of the chronic issues, and helping people manage their chronic conditions. That's what's really important in all this, is that dealing with that. And I really, we've sort of got already a model here in Lane County through sponsors, and doing that for the post-prison population, and doing a supportive housing where they have the parole supervision right in the housing units, and folks come there to meet, and they do groups there, and all sorts of various support that goes to those folks, that when they move beyond that post-prison housing, they've established some good cognitive behavioral personal strategies, that they don't end up back in the prison system or in the jail. So really great concept. My concern, though, probably is not so much with how do we get it built, is how do we staff it past that first year. And where's the budget for the support, the actual case management and support, and that sort of thing? Because it's easy to come up with capital funds for low-income housing. Well, I shouldn't say easy. There are ways to come up with capital funds to actually construct low-income housing. The difficult part is where's the operational funds? And this is not just operational, like when you have an on-site manager for one of our other Baskin Village or something like that, and a little bit of support. This is far beyond that. So I kind of look at Steve and say, do you have an idea how you're going to staff these two facilities in the future?
Part of the process we're going through with HACSA is to develop a pro forma that includes the operating costs for the staff of the facility. There's the operational staff that is there, and you need to have staffing 24/7 at this type of facility. And then there's the services, and the operational funding. There are a couple of things that we have in mind for that. One is that if we use the project-based Section 8 certificates, that ends up providing more subsidy to the project, which allows the project to afford greater operations. The other thing we have is we have in our department, we have the Continuum of Care grant that we get from HUD, and we have the ability within that grant to prioritize locally how we use funding. We're currently funding some projects, and we have a we have a facility as a part of that project that has seen its better days. So part of what we're looking at is looking at how we can use our existing resources specifically towards supporting the MLK. The last piece, the services, specifically, what's built in here is that we have behavioral health, which is also a federally qualified health center that is adjacent to the facility. This will require some additional case management. I think Oregon has been hopeful about a 1115 waiver that needs to, that's the Medicaid waiver that the state of Oregon has for the Oregon Health Plan. State's trying to accomplish that soon. And as a part of that, looking at making housing-related activities something that can be paid for with Medicaid funds. And that would be a negotiation with your local CCO. And we have Shannon Conley, and we have people from Trillium who have been involved with our FUSE project and who were engaging in the conversation about the services for the projects that we're anticipating.
Well, Commissioner Bozovich, the other thing I'd add is that since we'll be pursuing a low-income housing tax credit application to the state of Oregon, when you propose a project like this, it is scrutinized for its long-term viability, and the investors in those tax credits also go through a rigorous underwriting process. So there's folks with an asset management background like yourself that are really looking at the project viability long-term and asking the same question that you're asking.
That's great. I appreciate those answers. I'll just, while we got Jacob here and we were off in HACSA and maybe people weren't paying attention, I just want to congratulate you again and sponsors for getting the Meyer Memorial Trust grant for the Oaks at 14th, $200,000 grant to support that. That's also part of how we can get there, is getting the private charitable trusts to invest in this. So I really appreciate the effort there in getting that done. And I'll also make note here, one of my big things is the 15th night and dealing with youth homelessness, because I think it's a little bit easier thing for us to deal with because it's just a smaller population that we're trying to deal with, as far as something that we can tackle and get done, sort of like we did with the Vet 365. But this Housing First model is part of that 15th night solution. It's part of the toolbox to getting there, because you are probably going to be dealing with the single mom with a young child and getting them off the street. This is part of that, so I really appreciate the work on it. I will note that I'll be interested to hear what your strategies are to deal with both these sites, our event sites. You've got Ducks games across the street and having to deal with the lack of traffic accessibility on Saturdays in the fall for the behavioral health site, and then you've got, during the actual fair week, that's not exactly the easiest place to get to in Lane County either on this site. So in the future, you might want to think about, what are the strategies around a facility that requires this much case management, possible medical service, services. Of course, they have to have that there for the Ducks game too, and for the fair. So it's kind of like there might actually be synergistic in some ways in understanding those plans, but those are going to be planning issues for both these sites being adjacent to events.
Commissioner Lycan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question I have is so once something like this built, folks moved in, is there expectation is that it's likely these folks will still be on some sort of public assistance?
I think some of the folks who are there will be on public assistance, but I think for most of the folks, the idea is that they would be working. I think, that there are people who will be on parental leave, but for the most part, most of the folks that we serve currently who are in families who are homeless, folks are working. Oftentimes they may be working at minimum wage, but the other piece of this that we didn't discuss in either location is having workforce and employment training services available for folks so that they can train up make a better wage, particularly for family who are living in sort of a transitional housing facility. Oftentimes, the idea is to move up and move out. So we hope we see that.
Actually, that was what I was hoping you were going to say, because I think that's going to be critical, whatever the case may be, in how we approach this. Because what this is not addressing is what I call the crisis of affordable housing. And we are in a significant crisis on that. Excuse me, my voice is leaving here for a minute. But and I look at it this way, that, if Eugene, Springfield, Lane County want to be seriously taken as a Silicon Shire, as a high-tech area, with the gift that's being presented by Phil and Penny Knight at the U of O over a 10-year period, being Applied Sciences Center, we have to have affordable housing. And that's not what this is addressing. But I think the workforce piece, to me, is going to be extremely key. And the reality is this. There's a lot of people out here that aren't interested in going to a 4-year college. But let me tell you, there's a lot of employment, a lot of opportunities out there that do not take a college degree, and you can earn significant amounts of dollars. And so I think that's going to be key, really getting folks trained, understanding what the opportunities are out there. And so I appreciate that, and I'm going to hold you to it, by the way, because to me that's a significant issue. It's a passion. If we don't have folks trained and prepared and ready to go, I'm a strong believer in a hand up opportunity here, and I think this is what maybe some of this is talking about. But we've got to maintain that, and we've got to make sure that folks are willing to say, okay, here's a hand up. Now it's time to make sure we're trained, and there's going to be opportunities here. The last thing we want to see is folks that I don't want to see my children, for instance, go to school, grow up here, and say, I don't have an opportunity, I'm out of here. We got to continue to maintain opportunities to stay right here. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
So a few comments from me and questions possibly. First of all, I want to thank you for the great work that you're doing, Steve and Jacob, on this and the Poverty and Homeless Board. As I look at some of the ideas, so you're proposing a facility over at the behavioral health site. Now, that's a pretty large site. Is there opportunity to maybe have multiple facilities there, or is it deemed that it's only adequate to support one? Have you had conversations about that?
That's a good question, and that was not part of our initial land use assessment, but it's certainly something that we could come back to you and give you a preliminary assessment of that.
I was curious, the first floor looked like it had some extensive services, and I was wondering if you built a facility fairly close by, if you could use the same service pool to serve another project in the area if it was close enough. Then some questions, I guess, specifically. I serve as a liaison to the Fair Board, and this item hasn't came before the Fair Board, so they've got we got one member here today. We had an additional one here earlier, so I'm sure they're going to be very interested. But it would be, from my knowledge, or from my, I guess, questions, it would be nice to know, I think we purchased that property not too long ago, and it would be nice to know what resources purchased that site. I'm not sure if it was economic development, lottery funds, or what that was used to purchase that. Does it come with some specific, economic development was some of the key pieces. Want to make sure that this is not a similar situation like road fund. If you purchase something with road fund money, it's not available for other than road fund purposes. So kind of want to make sure that that's the case. We're in a process of planning, so, I kind of want to hold some of my comments until we understand what the planning and the need for the fairgrounds future is. But one of my concerns ultimately is that we have limited space for the fairgrounds, and if we start entertaining other opportunities with that limited space, then we're hamstringing the fair facility, the event center. And we've made, I think, as a board, a commitment to be probably in the 10 10, maybe even longer year timeframe that's going to be the event center and the site for this. So I want to make sure that when we're making decisions to reallocate space to other ventures that that we're doing it with the most information available. And so hopefully the current planning process will help us guide that decision-making process. And then I guess a question for you is, as you look at the 600 units, it looks to me like these are designed about 50 units per structure, is that right?
Correct, but in order to achieve 600 units, we are going to have to look at a financing model for larger buildings.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that you're going to duplicate one of these 12 times. You might have a bigger facility or other type of housing needs. I know that when Commissioner Farr and I toured the Mission, there was property over there that they talked about some additional housing opportunities. So I know in this community there's other sites that would be appropriate. I don't know if it comes with the caveat that land is already purchased and could be repurposed without a cost, but I do think that there's other areas in the community that could accommodate these too. So thank you. Mr. Farr.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we have a time certain in a few minutes, but just wanted to point out that a couple of points regarding Operation 600. We're looking at two very specific projects right here. It's much more enthusiastic than two projects, Operation 600, and as you pointed out, it's going to require other models. That this is a beginning for Lane County. And Mr. Chair, and Jacob and Steve, just last week, I had a pastor from a church come to me who had a vision and a dream of some church property that is not being used currently, that this pastor specifically said, could we build a unit for women and children, women and homeless children? And I thought, you know, we may have been talking about some things like that. So what made Operation 365 successful was that it was unilateral throughout the community. We had a great deal of support from nonprofits, from private industry, and from individuals who stepped forward to help it achieve its ultimate result of housing for homeless veterans. The same applies to Operation 600. With Operation 365, we kind of kicked it off. We kicked it off with a summit in 2015 in April. We got a lot of people together from all over the state and locally who had never really been involved in housing projects before, who became deeply immersed in housing and remain so to this day. I would envision something very similar with Operation 600, and we've talked about potentially a summit in the spring or late winter, probably the spring of 2017, a similar sort of summit. We'll bring a lot of people together to talk about the innovative ways that we're going to achieve our goal by 2021 of housing 600, of placing 600 units on the market. And these are units typically that aren't free for the people living there. People pay a rent in the units, and that's the income source. You talked about the Section 8 vouchering for project-based vouchering being an income source. So all of this makes everything more attractive and more doable as we move forward. You know, these are residential facilities, as you pointed out. They're not for the day use, such as the Bud Clark Center in Portland has a day use facility. We do have day use facilities. We have the Richard T. Lindholm facility in West Eugene. It's not adequate for all of the people, but that's the type of day use facility that is not going to be associated with this. So when we talk about events that happen at the fairgrounds or at Austin Stadium, really most of the year is at the 358 other days of the year that we're accommodating the people who live there. You know, the events for the football games are 6 or 7, maybe 8 games a year, plus a spring ball game. The events at the fairgrounds are more year-round, but you know, it's, the rest of the time is being facilitated at helping people is being facilitated at the facilities. So it's a broad discussion, and I'm hoping that we'll get a lot of people involved in it, much the same as we did with Operation 365. It's laudable, and it's something that if you think about it now. This is not a time for hand-wringing, and this is not a time for just saying, oh, look at all the problems that we have. But who can possibly consider, so who can sleep at night if you know there are women out there with children, school age or preschool age children who don't have a place to sleep tonight. You know, how can you live with that? Now, once again, that's an emotional outcry, but that is a real reality of the situation. We do have that in this community. I know a woman and child who, child is now 12 years old, who the first 6 years of that child's life, they were homeless. They spent those first 6 years homeless. And the irreversible damage, or very difficult to reverse damage on that child is, you know, it's heartbreaking to see. And the danger is that the women tend to do things that are less than savory to look out for their children. And behavioral health disorders do materialize where otherwise they may not have materialized. So I'm excited about moving forward, and I'm excited about a summit perhaps to talk more deeply about this. And the Poverty and Homelessness Board retreat, we had a pretty robust discussion about Operation 600. We had a very robust discussion, you know, about finding ways, about the Spring Summit, and about HACSA being an integral part of of the we're moving forward. So Alicia and Karen, we have the FUSE project that's going on to identify the people in need, and really we're moving in the right direction. I'm pretty excited about the fact that this is something that's going to be acceptable to the neighborhood. It'll work with the events, and having the support of the board and having the support of the community is integral to its success. So thank you.
Commissioner Bozievich.
So just one last quick thing, and I don't expect an answer immediately, but I would like you to look into what funds were actually used for the purchase of these properties and any restrictions on that funding, particularly with the fairgrounds. A lot of those funds out there are transient room taxes and have specific use identified with things that we use. So it may not be as easy as the county just handing a piece of property. It's like we can't take a road fund purchase property and hand it over. We have to reimburse the road fund because those are constitutionally limited funds. So I just, unless you know the answer right off the top of your head, both those properties, I don't know personally how they were purchased.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that this is the first of hopefully many meetings, and continue to make progress in attaining that 600 goal and helping people in need. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Got just a couple, 2-3 minutes before we have our 11 o'clock time certain. I noticed our legal counsel has joined us. Did you have some comments for the board this morning?
Just very briefly, I know that it's been in the news, and there was an editorial, I believe, in yesterday's paper in the Register Guard about it. But I just wanted to update you that you'll recall some time ago we were asked to join not a class action, but several other counties, plaintiffs that were suing the state of Oregon over the sick leave ordinance. The basic claim was that it violated a constitutional provision against unfunded mandates. As you may have seen, the decision was made not to join that litigation. Last week, Judge Murphy came down with a decision that said that the sick leave ordinance did violate the unfunded mandate provision in the Oregon Constitution. I've been getting a lot of questions from folks about what that means. It means that decision technically only applies to those 9 plaintiffs that were in that case. And of course, the state has indicated that it's going to appeal. The other question I've got was, what is that threshold? And for us, it was, just to give you an idea, to meet the constitutional threshold, given our budget, I think it's about $51,000. And my recollection is that the preliminary work we did when the board was considering whether or not to join that was that we did meet that threshold in terms of the same sorts of costs that were used in Linn County, as near as I can tell from the court's order. It's basically the administrative. It's not just the actual cost of providing the sick leave. It's the administrative costs and other things that went with it, setting up the system to track it and all those sorts of things. So I just wanted to update the board on that, and that's really all I have. I don't have any other announcements from County Council.
Okay. Any questions for legal counsel? All right. So it looks like our guest is here. Do we want to roll into our time certain, and then we'll see if we have time to finish the other items? So with that, our next item is a discussion and a report from the Red Cross, the Southwest Oregon chapter. I believe we have Carissa Hedich, is that correct? The Executive Director for the Southwest Oregon chapter. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Can I bring up some packets?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I believe this is pretty timely. When I got the request you wanted to come speak to the board about your programs and the great work you're doing, I asked myself, well, why didn't she come here first? We have our own facility here, and I got to speak to one of the former, I believe Chris Pryor was a former director for Red Cross, and he said, yeah, there was a bunch of changes. So actually, it's probably good that you're here today to tell us about the efforts and really the structure and how you're functioning. So welcome.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I worked with Diane to help get the meeting scheduled, and so I've been with Red Cross a total of 6 years, and just completed my first year in Oregon. We made the quality of life move, like a lot of people do, to come to Oregon, and we bought a house in Eugene. And we're really lucky we did, because just as the market was coming up, we were lucky when we bought it. And we completely love Lane County. We love to camp and fish, and this is a place where we want to kind of raise our family like everyone else in Oregon. It's a great place. And so with regards to Red Cross, I, in my role, like to meet with a lot of the local government officials. And so I've met your counterparts in Lynn County, Benton County, Jackson, Coos and Curry. I haven't been to Douglas yet, but also Jackson County. Just to kind of let you all know, I cover a 10-county footprint. So there has been a lot of changes way back when Red Cross was in every single county, and they all had their own brick and mortar, and they facilitated very local programs. And we still facilitate very local programs, but of course, maintaining brick and mortar is difficult, so we've consolidated. So about 3 years ago, we went through quite a significant change within the Red Cross, and we merged the Medford chapter from Jackson County up into sort of Southwest Oregon. So that's what we encompass now. So inside your packets, on the left-hand side in the back, is a map of our footprint. So our main office is in Eugene. It's on Bethel Drive on the railroad tracks, kind of down there. And we also have a chapter office in Klamath and Roseburg and Medford. So those are our bases that we serve, but we also have local volunteers that respond to the home fires. Now in Cresswell on Friday night, you might be aware that there was a fire that affected 13 people, 9 adults and 4 kids. So we sent out a press release yesterday that on average we respond about 2 to 3 fires a day across our region. And our region is all of Oregon and 6 counties in Southwest Washington. On average across the year, that's what we responded to. Within the first 12 days of December, we responded to 43 fires. 7 of them were on Saturday, all across our state. So there's any number of reasons of how that happens. So thanks to the fire chiefs, they notify the Red Cross, and we call out our volunteers who are on call, and they show up at the scene of the fire, and we are able to provide them really their basic human needs. Where are you going to sleep tonight? What are you going to eat tonight? And what do you have to wear? Those are the basic human needs that we take care of. So we're the bridge over the river for the first couple of days. And with our caseworkers, we also guide them into other additional resources. So that's our response to the single-family home fires. And of course, we are a nonprofit organization. We don't receive any federal funding, and we do our work in partnership with grants and corporate gifts and individual giving. That's how we make it happen. And 90% of our workforce are when it comes to the national disasters are volunteers. So 91 cents of our spending is actually going to programs because of the amount of volunteers that we are able to do. When it comes to the larger disasters, like what's happened with Hurricane Matthew, with the Louisiana floods, we deployed 79 people within our chapter area across the whole entire year to help out with those natural deployments. And so that's a benefit to us because our people are sent to other people's disasters. They learn a bunch of skill sets and then they come back. So that's an advantageous opportunity for them. One of the newer programs I want to share with you, there's actually two of them. One is our home fire campaign, and this is where we install free smoke detectors in people's homes. And we launched this program nationally. It's free for the Red Cross. We have a great partnership with the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office. We actually installed 10,000 alarms since we started this program across the whole region. And we work in two different ways. One is you can call the hotline number, which is on the flyer there. You can post that in your county's area newsletters, however you want to. Anyone can call that hotline, and then it gets directed to the county where they live. And then our disaster program manager who manages that program will assign volunteers to go out on strike teams. So we'll go out with like 2 volunteers, call up the person, say we're going to be there on Wednesday at 3 o'clock or whatever it is, and make an appointment-based install. So we've done hundreds of those throughout the year. We also do event-based installs where we target specifically vulnerable communities. We mostly focus on mobile home communities where we work with the site manager and say that they help us distribute the flyer and say we'll do it on, let's say, Saturday the 28th of January. So we plan out about 2 months. The management company starts collecting appointments of their residents because they have that trust to know who their people are. And then we will take that list and start following up with the clients individually. And then we show up with a group of Red Cross volunteers, CERT members, faith-based civic groups, and we'll do an install between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. And so we get them trained up in an hour in 3 different function areas. They do the installer, they do the educating, because if we just don't give them an alarm, because the alarm will likely go on their kitchen table. We actually install it in the proper place within their house. These are the 10-year lithium batteries, so the battery is actually built into the alarm itself. And then you have a test button, and you also have a hush button. So if you're burning toast and you have to like fan out your house, you can turn off push the hush button, and that way you don't remove it from the wall and take out the old 9-volt battery that a lot of people are used to. So smoke detectors actually have life expectancies. Really anything over 7 years, we automatically replace. So usually it's 5, 7 to 10 years is kind of the average lifespan. Across the country, the whole purpose of launching this program is we wanted to lessen the instances of death and fire by 25% nationwide. There's 2,500 people that die every year due to home fires. They're onesies and twosies in local communities, but across the whole entire country, that's a lot of deaths when it comes to something that is likely preventable. And so we respond to home fires, and now we're moving more on the preventative side. So this is where the commissioners can help, is helping us get the word out there to your city officials, to your fire departments. We had a home fire campaign in Sweet Home right before Thanksgiving, and we installed 177 alarms, and we targeted 7 different mobile home communities. And that was in partnership with the university, with the CERT members, with the fire departments. So across the country, we've saved 116 people's lives. The other program that we have is called Prepare Out Loud, and this focuses on the Cascadia subduction zone. And there's, I'm sure as commissioners, you get all these reports that a lot of about what the science is, what the infrastructure vulnerabilities are. This is a program that the Red Cross developed this summer, and we are doing kind of road shows in the spring and the fall. This spring we're hitting 20 cities across the state. So Eugene Springfield is we're returning, we did it in the fall. We hosted it at the U of O. We had standing room only, and it had like 150 people in the room. We had it in Medford. We had 240 people in the room down at Asante. We had it at OSU. Again, people were sitting in the aisles. Every single seat was full with like 220 people. So across the state, this program makes a very scary topic into something that people can understand. They know why it forms, like clockwork. There's a reason why it happens. And then it also has the historical data. It talks about preventative measures. Like, seriously, what would you do if it happened right now? I mean, look around you. You know, that could potentially fall, getting under your desk. Look at your office of where you are. We show videos that simulate a 9.0 earthquake inside an office room. You have like a second before the table is sloshed across. I mean, the violence of a earth rattle like that is really strong. We showed videos about store clerks in Japan. Instead of ducking and covering, they decided to hold the wine bottles on the top shelf so they wouldn't fall down. That was the choice that they made, rather than protecting themselves. So it's a very informative program. It also talks about the social preparedness culture, about instead of taking a picture of what you made for dinner that night and posting it on Facebook, you would take a picture of you bolting in your water heater to say, this is one step my family made to be more prepared. Or for Christmas, you take a picture of an emergency radio that you gave your wife as a stocking stuffer rather than a pair of socks. You know, those are the small little changes we socially can start making to make people more prepared. Because, you know, we know what it's like. Along the I-5 corridor, there's a lot of bridges that were built before the 70s when they even thought about building onto certain codes. Crossing the rivers, there's plenty of them here. So I personally, you know, I grew up in Alaska. I'm born and raised up there. We had earthquakes, but nothing like, I mean, they had the 1964 earthquake. I wasn't around then. But the Cascade Subduction Zone is just something different because it is the coastline and it's a very large span. So we're doing, I think I have 7 presentations in my area in the spring. I'm looking at LCC as doing they have an auditorium that I'm just looking at potentially getting pricing of what the potential cost is to use 2 classrooms that can have up to about 250 people. So, and then we'll do another one in the fall. And then I'll also do like Coos Bay. I mean, we can't do, because we only have one presenter, we can't bring it into every single, you know, every small town because he also has his day job and he lives in Portland. So we have to be very strategic in how we do these programs. So that's one thing. And then, you know, on one other program people aren't familiar with the Red Cross is our services to the armed forces. It was actually our original line of service. You know, Clara Barton, the angel of the battlefield. 20 years later, she caught wind of the Red Cross movement sweeping Europe. She came back, started the Red Cross in the 1880s. So the Red Cross in Oregon is going to be celebrating 100 years next year, which is pretty spectacular for a nonprofit doing the type of work that we do. So just to show how our services have adapted over time, in World War I, the Red Cross volunteers taught the service members returning back from the battlefields how to read Braille because they were blinded with the tear gas and the barbed wire. Now, one of the services that we do, one of our biggest programs, is emergency communication. So whenever there's a birth, a death, an illness, or a hardship at home, if son's in Korea and mom is here and dad has a heart attack, she can't call the son up and say, hey, honey, come home. The command is like, I need a Red Cross message. And that's because we are neutral and independent. We contact the hospitals, we get the diagnosis, we type up a message, it's sent electronically, and then they are able to bring the service member home. We also do what's called the reconnection workshops. So this is where the military came to us and they said, we want to help facilitate sessions for families and kids with the service members who've been on multiple deployments and getting readjusted back into the family. That way it's kind of like off the record, and the stigma is a little more released when it's not the military facilitating it, but a third party facilitating it. So we use our certified mental health workers to, they're trained up in this program, and we've done hundreds across the area last year. So this is a newer area for us. We just have a new disaster program manager that covers that whole state, or Armed Forces manager. So she's making connections to the VA and also a lot of it with the National Guard units. And of course, with blood, we, as the Red Cross, we manage about 40% of the nation's blood supply, which is huge. So obviously in Lane County, you know, Lane Blood Services is the prominent blood collection site, but across the whole rest of the state is predominantly Red Cross. And, you know, we just had a blood drive actually at the VA 2 weeks ago. So we were able to do blood drives here in the area, also within Lane. So it's, you know, as you know, you can donate up to every 56 days. And the lifespan of blood is 42 days. It's usually off the shelf in 5. So it's a very quick turnaround. And when it comes to natural disasters, one good thing about having a network of blood the way we do is that when there is, like with the Hurricane Sandy that happened several years ago, they canceled hundreds of blood drives up and down the East Coast. People can't get out of their house to go donate blood. But guess what? There's still surgeries. People still have heart attacks. There's still burn victims. There's still preemies. We were able to utilize our network and pull blood from other areas to compensate for the blood that wasn't being able to get collected in other parts of the country. That's pretty fascinating. And then, of course, our first aid and CPR classes. I'm sure you've gone down to our building, been certified in that. We also offer babysitting classes as well that are geared towards kids that are between 11 and 15 years old. So in here, I included our year in review. So that kind of gives you the bigger picture of what we've done within our region and the Prepare Out Loud. So one of the ways I'm working with Commissioner Tucker up in Linn County. He is he attended the Corvallis one, and he said, I want this in Linn County. So we're focusing it primarily in Lebanon, and he's helping us reach out to, you know, corporate partners and also working with the local government to, you know, bring the draw in, because we have an opportunity to provide to several hundred people, and of course we want to fill the room. And, you know, the local government supports it because the more people are prepared, that's one less person they have to necessarily worry about, you know, when something strikes. And it all comes down to, you know, to numbers, and we understand. So, you know, within our area, so our region is divided into 3 areas. So Southwest Oregon is our area based in Eugene. Then there's Central and Eastern Oregon based out of Bend. Southwest Washington's in Vancouver. And then the Portland area is my kind of headquarters. And they also kind of cover the Salem and the northern part of the coast. And I kind of cover Florence downwards to Brookings. And then Cape Falls and Lake County. Haven't been to Lake yet, but I'm sure it's quite a drive. Do you have any questions?
Sure. Questions? Commissioner Bozovich?
So, not a lot of questions, but first, it's kind of interesting. I grew up like 2 miles from the Claire Barton House. Our elementary school used to take trips there to tour the Claire Barton House in Glen Echo, Maryland. So, referencing her was like brought me back to childhood. So, you guys do some wonderful work. I will also, you know, as you talk about Prepare Out Loud, one of the things I'm trying to promote in Salem is to fully fund the Shake Alert system, which is currently being funded at a rate it won't be built out till 2021. And it's only about a $32 million total build out. And so if they just would put a few more million into this biennium, they could build it out relatively shortly. Because one of the things about preparation is how much advance warning of the shaking do you get? And for a subduction zone earthquake here in the valley, it could be minutes that you get a chance to prepare, you know, and do things like flip a gas valve or you know, slow a train down, you know, multiple things that would save multiple lives. So I really like the prevention side. And I believe you've got an event coming up in Florence. Speaking of, you mentioned your territory starts in Florence on Saturday, February 18th.
Yes.
In Green Trees, and you're looking for folks to volunteer.
Yes.
And I haven't really gotten back with you on some of that because it's been a little bit crazy. I think you sent me that email a while ago, but I've been trying to think of which agencies to connect you with for volunteers. But anyone watching the board meeting here down in the Florence area that's a good opportunity to volunteer to help some senior citizens get new smoke alarms in there. And there's pretty vulnerable units there in Green Trees. So it's a great effort, and I put it on my calendar, so I'm hoping maybe even I can get down there and help out.
Yeah, and just a shout out to Florence. They still hold our state's record for the most number of alarms installed. 297. That's what we did last year in one day. So that's the record that we aim to set again with Florence. We have a hardy bunch out there, and they are they want to get it done.
Yeah. Really good community down there.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most active Rotaries in the county, just about outside of Eugene, and also their chamber. They've just got a very active community. A lot of volunteers down there.
Perfect.
Others? Comments? Oh, I guess you're left us speechless.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate you requesting to be here today to explain. It's great information. I do hear the reports when you mobilize and activate to help folks in need. And I believe we have a regular blood drive here in the building. Don't know how often it is, but it seems to be pretty regular. So I know we're trying to do our part here too as an organization and helping. So and it's also nice to put a face to who we might need to call in case we do need some help and refer people to.
Yep.
And we do hear the planning and concern with the seduction zone and the earth, potential earthquake that might strike and the devastation, and it's working together, creating the collaboration and partnerships that's gonna determine how we respond to those and how we can help people. So I appreciate us making those connections and being able to work together. Other comments, Commissioner Bozovich?
Well, I do have a question. Would a room like this work for your Prepare Out Loud?
We would need probably 200 plus.
And this isn't a large enough audience, I guess. Okay.
Yeah,
Trying to think of where we might be able to be helpful. So.
Yeah, I met with, oh gosh, I kind of remember his first name. He has a Zuliger, I think is his last name. It's very Pete. Yeah, I met with him a couple weeks ago, and he was thinking on the county side where it might be, but just we've kind of learned through the fall. I mean, our preferred kind of spot is an auditorium style downward seats with big screen and the stage. Just as it's very focused, and it's not your typical PowerPoint. I mean, our presenter is very funny, and he's like half the show. And when you have a good teacher, you learn more, and that's pretty much why people like him so much, is because he is a former teacher, and he has 3 little kids, and he's very funny. So it's a great program. So I've got a little bit of time. I wanted to kind of zero in. I'm kind of looking at LCC. We want kind of the better parking. I'm hoping to get a classroom there at the Forum building. And then we'll start promoting it into the March and April time period. I have a Southern Oregon roadshow with about 4 programs the week of March 6th. But after that, I can fit this one in. And kind of depending on the outcome, it could be, we could do potentially a daytime one and then an evening one too. So we could hit 2 different audiences depending on the space, how it could go, and what the draw would be.
So maybe I suggest that you maybe contact the Bethel School District about Willamette High School's auditorium. It sounds like it would fit your specifications pretty well.
Okay.
And they may be able to work with you on how much it costs. I don't know. Might have somebody on the board that would have a contact for you.
We like in-kind. We like in-kind space.
That's a great suggestion, Commissioner. We had an LCOG meeting there, and that's a great facility they have.
So Bethel High School is a good auditorium?
Willamette High School.
Willamette High School is the Bethel School District.
Oh, Willamette High School. Okay.
And Commissioner Farr might have an in as far as a contact goes.
Okay.
Commissioner Sorens.
I have a question that I'm sure lots of other people have asked. I was a bit hesitant to ask it because it shows some ignorance on my part, but I see commercial blood gatherers out there, and people are paid to give blood, but then there are volunteer organizations like yours and the other blood group. Could you just straighten that out for me as well as the public that might not understand this? Who's making money off of blood and who is receiving blood because it's a voluntary donation?
So there's a very good response for that I'll have to just give you. I can't, I have to really hear from the blood people how all that works. So I know bits and pieces of it, but I don't want to I want to be really certain in how I do that. There are multiple, I can tell you, there are like 30 different blood collection agencies all across the country. And, some of them are for profit because it is a business that ultimately the way the Red Cross works is, we do charge hospitals for blood because ultimately we have to cover our costs. We have to pay phlebotomists, we have to pay for equipment, we have to pay for testing. So there is a cost to blood. But why some people can pay people over not as volunteers, I can't be super certain and give you the right answer. So I can email you that response. It might be under the FAQs. I'm not really sure.
Okay, well, just just to invite you to do that, if you get on our website, there's a pretty easy access to email the Board of Commissioners, and that would be helpful because we may be asked that. About that. Thank you so much.
Yep. And also, Lane Blood Services, they're actually kind of BloodWorks, which is a more regional program. So that's one of our, that's another agency that's collected that's not tied to the Red Cross. It's a different blood collection group.
Commissioner Bozovich?
So probably the confusion is whole blood generally is being collected by these charitable nonprofits that are only selling it at cost, which is every 56 days. What you generally see where you're getting paid is for plasma and plasmapheresis. And
that might be.
And having used that to supplement my food budget in college, you could do that twice a week.
Twice a week?
Yeah, because what they do is they pull the blood, centrifuge it, and give you back your red blood cells, and they just keep the plasma. Because it took about 2 hours to do that, and I could study while I was doing it, so it was a great way to earn money in college. At a pretty good, back then it was $18 a week for twice a week sitting in a chair for 4 hours. So I don't know what the going rate is now. It's probably a lot higher, but that's where you get paid. And then that plasma is used in a lot of preparing of pharmaceuticals and other things, and they're sold into the industry, the medical industry.
All right. Commissioner Farr?
I just have maybe a personal question regarding blood. People who visited England in the late 1990s, they still cannot give blood, is that right?
It's kind of that mad cow thing. It's one of those questions that's still on there. So we're regulated by the FDA, and they're the ones that set the questions. And so so there are some questions that are being put on and being pulled off and being adjusted. And having donated blood just 2 weeks ago, it was on there again.
A lot of people will publish and let people know how many times they give blood in a given year. I give blood 0 times ever because I visited England in the 1990s.
No, I mean, and that's understandable. There's some people, there's 33% of the population is actually able to donate blood, but less than 5% actually do.
Oh, wow.
33% are eligible to, less than 5% actually does. And it's something that can't be, and whether you aren't able to donate blood, you can still be an advocate for recruiting people to join the blood drive. Because really the success of hosting a blood drive is getting people out there to donate. So, going around, making cookies, sending reminders, allowing your employees time off of work, being supportive of something like that, whether you host it every other month or every month. I mean, we need a regular, steady state of blood on our shelves all the time. And there was a board member that in Georgia, I don't know if you happen to remember the day trader shooting that happened. They killed about 8 people. This is like 7-8 years ago. This guy walked into his office, shot and killed 8 people. She was shot herself. She had 110 units of blood given to her. And the only reason why they had the blood on the shelf is because they had a high school blood drive 2 days prior that allowed the blood to get tested and available. If it wasn't for blood ready for her, she wouldn't have made it. And the same thing, in car accidents. You can get in your car and drive down the road and hit a light pole and get 40 units of blood in you. You never, ever know when you want it. So a lot of people donate after major incidences, but we need it all the time, regularly, so we can respond when we need mass numbers. And actually, January and the summertime are the most critical times because in the holidays, we're all busy with holiday parties. In the summertime, we're on vacation. And 20% of our blood supply comes from high school and college students. So when they're off in the summertime, they don't think about hosting blood drives on campus. And that's when we have the lower numbers of blood, is in the summer.
Okay.
Sorry, I like blood, but it's fascinating.
Commissioner Bozick?
I'll just say I'm doing my part. I'm on my second card with Lane Memorial as far as donations go.
Good job. Good job.
I'm making up for Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm also a CMV neg. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Yep, and I'll give you my cards also. So really, it's just a pleasure to meet you all, and you have my card, and you know my face, and you know our story. So if ever there are any opportunities, whether it's wildfire season or flood or winter storm or whatever it might be, please reach out to me so we can work together and kind of build the partnerships that we want to in the community.
Great. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So, question to my colleagues. We just have our announcements from the administrator and ourselves. We want to go ahead and finish those 2 items, then break for lunch or carry it into the afternoon.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I would prefer to do it this afternoon.
Do it this afternoon? Okay. So with that, we'll go ahead and recess until 1:30 when we'll take up the rest of our agenda.